one of the first papers I read from you guys, and that is definitely one of my favorite pieces, is one that was written, I believe it was by Peter Berezin.
Erison. Is it about
Yeah.
the metaverse?
No, the one about nuclear conflict, what to do in
Ah,
case, there's a nuclear war escalation and there's a real probability that the world is going to blow up, like literally the whole thing. And I think the paper went along the lines of just go long, because if there's a war and we all die, well, your portfolio won't matter anymore. And if I mean, in the case the market is correcting, he meant it. And if there's no war in the end, and markets recover, well, you want to be as long as possible, because you're going to take advantage of that bull market. So I thought it
so
was
our
very
research is
interesting.
clearly we're very upbeat all the time, right?
But yeah,
But
that's it.
we take a lot of pride in thinking differently, and so a lot of people who follow BCA are always hooked because they're like, wow, you guys are contrarian, you're anti-consensus, you're choosing topics to think about and write about that I never would have expected, and on the common topics, you just think differently, and that's part of BCA's DNA and ethos. And so that's often the case, that when someone tells me, "Oh yeah, I noticed BCA because of this story, or this thing that you wrote, or this thing I heard you saying," and then they kind of stay hooked from there.
Yeah, I wonder if you can even have a research house, an independent research house nowadays, without being contrarian in some way. Because if you're just consensual on saying what everyone else is saying all the time, then most likely clients are not going to be willing to pay for what you're producing, right?
Well, you'd be surprised. I do think that there's some value in being, thinking consensus. And here's what I mean by that. When I was growing up, I started my kind of professional life in Washington D.C., as you had mentioned, and I was like a news junkie. I
Hmm.
still am, and I was reading the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the FT, and then I was reading all these publications: the New Republic, the Weekly Standard, the National Review, living in DC and just kind of imbibing everything that DC had to offer. And what I started to realize was that those newspapers were really important in the sense that they sort of provided the conventional wisdom for every policymakers or the broad DC community. And then those magazines, at least at that time, and obviously the world of opinion has changed and evolved dramatically. Those magazines were the non-consensus thinkers. They were the ones who were contrarian. The New Republic famously kind of mastered the art of writing a headline that would take the conventional wisdom and turn it on its head as a way of kind of drawing you in. And so I sort of think about BCA as playing that same role.
Hmm.
Uh, the with no disrespect intended, I won't even mention the institutions, but there are some institutions I think that do more conventional wisdom thinking, and that's okay. Like that kind of gets the framework into some of our clients' heads. But then you need to go deeper, and you need to challenge those frameworks, and that's the role that BCA plays. And when you're an investor, obviously you're looking for the edge, you're looking for alpha, and so you simply can't afford to only imbibe the conventional wisdom. You have to challenge yourself, and BCA I think plays that role.
Yeah, personally, what I'm always after when I'm reading research is finding those gold nuggets, those little parts of the narrative that maybe you didn't think about, but that really make you look at the whole thing from a different angle. And no matter if it's aligned or against your thesis, I think it's what I need is someone that goes a little bit deeper or through a different perspective than what I had in mind. And I think for that, BCA research is absolutely top notch, and probably one of the best in the world. So congratulations. And
Well, appreciate the kind words.
no, absolutely, I mean, you guys are crushing it. So we're going to be talking a lot about BCA, but I want to take a step back. I want to hear a little bit about your journey, because obviously you've been in a lot of places. And something that really grabbed my attention while I was researching this episode was that you didn't start your career in finance. You started in Washington working as a civilian advisor in the Department of Defense, which is a far cry from leading a global macro research house. And I was wondering, how did that experience in foreign affairs shape the way you think about global systems, the world, and more specifically decision making at BCA?
Yeah, I mean, dramatically. So I grew up in a suburban household in New Jersey. My parents were both teachers. My dad was a psychologist and a therapist and an academic. My mom was a kindergarten teacher. I had no exposure to the military really at all. And what ended up happening was during my senior year in college, 9/11 happened.
Hmm.
And I was a government major, and I was just my brain could not process what had just happened. I just um, I tend to be somebody who becomes insatiably curious about different topics, and I just wanted to better understand how something like that could have happened. And so, of course, I was drawn to going to Washington and getting involved in national security and foreign policy and foreign affairs. And I've also always been somebody who's been drawn to um, systems, people, publications that challenge how I think.
Hmm.
And as I mentioned, I grew up in a place where there was no military, and so working at the Pentagon was a very, very different cultural experience for me. And I felt so energized by that. I was confronting perspectives, experiences that were dramatically different from the ones that I had grown up surrounded by. And for me, that's always forced accelerated learning and growth.
Hmm.
I always try to surround myself by people with people who think differently than me, who challenge me. One of my leadership styles is to not only encourage people on my team to challenge me, but to require them to challenge me. And so yeah, that's kind of how I started in Washington, and it had a dramatic effect on how I think.
And why did you leave the Pentagon? I mean, it sounds terribly exciting.
It was. I think, when I was still relatively young and junior in my career when I decided to leave Washington and leave the Pentagon. I think that I sensed that there was a world out there that I wanted to explore beyond Washington and the Pentagon. I didn't, I wouldn't have articulated it that way at the time, but I felt very entrepreneurial, even though, again, I wouldn't have described it that way. I was always meeting people for coffee, trying to better understand what they do. And I also, I think, yearned for the opportunity to advance more quickly than the bureaucracy affords.
Mhm.
And I'm a pretty competitive person, and so I think I was drawn to the private sector because I just had this innate sense that my skills and my interests could be applied elsewhere. Even though, again, I'm so grateful for the experience that I had in DC. I learned so much working among the military at the Pentagon, and it was just it built an incredible foundation. But yeah, that was kind of what drew me away, and I moved to London and joined GLG in the London office, and again, kind of launched yet another cycle of being in an environment that was very different, and that growth happened in an accelerated manner.
It's super cool to have the Pentagon in your CV. I'll tell you that. It's like secret agent by day, and
No, it
uh,
sounds cool. I mean, it actually was quite cool. I have to say, working at the Pentagon and working among the military, I'm very grateful for it. But it's like a big office building. There's like a barber, there's like food court. It's pretty self-contained. But I was not a secret agent. I promise you that.
you've reached the end of this clip, but the story is not over. To watch the full episode, follow this link. Go on, you can do it.